Have you ever noticed how quickly your focus scatters in a single day? One moment, you're diving into an important task. The next, you're pulled into a vortex of notifications, endless scrolling, or the nagging weight of unfinished to-dos. It's not just you. Modern life is designed to fragment our attention, leaving us feeling drained, distracted, and strangely unfulfilled even when we're busy. But what if the secret to reclaiming your focus and your peace wasn't found in another productivity hack, but in a 2,000-year-old philosophy? Stoicism, the ancient practice embraced by emperors, thinkers, and warriors, offers a surprisingly modern solution to our deepest struggles with distraction. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That power, the ability to refine your focus through discipline, isn't just about working harder. It's about seeing clearly, choosing deliberately, and cutting through the noise of what doesn't matter. This isn't about suppressing emotions or grinding through life with robotic endurance. Stoic discipline is the art of aligning your attention with what truly deserves it, your goals, your values, the moments that make life meaningful. Imagine waking up each day with unwavering clarity, knowing exactly where to direct your energy because you've learned to distinguish between what you can control and what you can't. That's the heart of the dichotomy of control, one of Stoicism's most transformative tools. It's not just a philosophy, it's a daily practice of reclaiming your mind from chaos. And when you pair it with mindfulness, another Stoic cornerstone, you begin to notice how often your focus is hijacked by trivialities, how much mental space is wasted on things that don't move you forward. So how do we cultivate this kind of focus in a world that's constantly pulling us in a dozen directions? That's what we're exploring together. Over the course of this video, we'll break down practical Stoic principles you can apply immediately, starting with the discipline of attention, the power of intentional pauses, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your focus is yours to command. This isn't about adding more to your plate, it's about subtracting what doesn't belong. It's about finding stillness in motion and direction in the midst of noise. Because true productivity isn't measured by how much you do, but by how much of what you do truly matters. Ready to begin? Let's dive in. The dichotomy of control is the Stoic compass that cuts through life's noise, instantly clarifying where your energy belongs and where it doesn't. Picture this: you're caught in traffic, late for a meeting. Your grip tightens on the wheel, your pulse races, but here's the truth: the traffic beyond your control. Your reaction entirely yours to command. That's the essence of Epictetus' famous teaching. Some things are within our power, while others are not. Stoicism doesn't ask you to ignore reality, but to see it with unflinching honesty. Every moment you're faced with a choice: pour your focus into what you can influence, or exhaust yourself fighting waves you'll never calm. Think of a gardener planting seeds. She can't control the weather or guarantee each seed sprouts, but she can tend the soil, water consistently, and remove weeds. That's the Stoic approach, directing effort where it yields results, not where it evaporates into frustration. When you internalize this, something extraordinary happens. Anxiety loosens its grip because you stop mistaking what-ifs for action items. Your mind becomes a laser, not a scattered beam. Consider how much mental space we waste obsessing over others' opinions, fretting about deadlines we can't accelerate, replaying conversations we can't rewrite. Now imagine reclaiming that energy. Here's your challenge today. Pick one thing within your control: a task, a response, a single breath. Maybe it's muting notifications for an hour to write, or choosing patience when a colleague tests yours. That's where your power lies, not in the uncontrollable, but in the deliberate choices that shape your day. When you anchor yourself here, focus stops being a battle and becomes second nature. Stoicism teaches us that the present moment isn't just where life happens, it's the only place where real productivity takes root. Seneca, in his letters, put it bluntly: "You are living as if destined to live forever. Your own frailty never occurs to you." We trick ourselves into believing we have endless time, scattering our focus across a dozen half-finished tasks, only to look up and wonder where the day went. But here's the Stoic antidote: treat time as the non-renewable resource it is. Every moment spent distracted by trivialities is a trade. You're giving away the irreplaceable for the insignificant. Multitasking is the illusion of productivity. The Stoics knew this long before modern science confirmed it. When you split your attention, you're not doing more, you're doing everything poorly. Deep work, the kind that moves the needle, requires singular focus, the kind Marcus Aurelius practiced when he wrote, "Concentrate every minute on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness." Picture a sculptor chiseling marble. One misplaced strike can ruin hours of work, but when the mind is fully present, each action carries weight. That's the power of present moment awareness. It turns ordinary effort into extraordinary results. Try this today. Carve out 30 minutes, just 30, for undistracted work. Silence your phone, close the tabs, and commit to one task as if nothing else exists. Notice how resistance fades when you stop fighting for focus and simply settle into it. And when your mind wanders, because it will, gently guide it back, not with frustration, but with the discipline of a Stoic. This is the time I have. This is the task at hand. Now pause and ask yourself, what's your biggest time waster? Is it the endless scroll, the unnecessary meetings, the mental loops of worry? Name it, because awareness is the first step toward reclaiming your focus. The present moment is your workspace. Guard it like the Stoics guarded their minds, with intention, clarity, and unshakable resolve. Amor Fati, the love of fate, is where Stoic discipline transforms from mere acceptance into active embrace. Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his private journal, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's not passive resignation, it's alchemy. It's the realization that every obstacle, every setback, even the frustrations we curse under our breath, they're not interruptions to our path. They are the path. Think of a blacksmith tempering steel. The hammer isn't destroying the metal, it's shaping it into something unbreakable. Now apply that to your life. That project that's testing your patience, the unexpected delay throwing your schedule into chaos. Amor Fati whispers, this is your training ground. When you stop resisting what you can't change and start asking, how does this reveal what I'm capable of? Everything shifts. A modern example: consider the entrepreneur whose product launch crashes. The Stoic response isn't rage or despair, it's curiosity. What does this teach me about my systems? Where can I improve? The obstacle becomes the curriculum. Here's the profound paradox. When you stop seeing struggles as enemies and start treating them as allies, focus sharpens naturally. Why? Because mental energy once wasted on complaining is now channeled into creating. Marcus didn't journal about his hardships to vent. He wrote to mine them for wisdom. So ask yourself today, what's one challenge you've been resisting? What if you greeted it like a Stoic, not with gritted teeth, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows that friction polishes the stone? This isn't about pretending difficulties don't sting. It's about recognizing that the very things we wish were easier are often what make us stronger. The writer facing writer's block discovers richer metaphors in the struggle. The athlete sidelined by injury learns strategy while healing. even in small moments, the missed train, the cancelled plan, there's an invitation to adapt, to innovate, to find a stillness within the storm. Amor Fati doesn't erase life's roughness, it gives you the tools to walk across it without losing your footing. So try this reframe today. When you hit a snag, pause and ask, how could this be exactly what I need right now? Not as a platitude, but as a genuine question. Sometimes the answer won't be obvious, and that's fine. The practice itself rewires your focus, turning distractions into fuel. Because when you love fate, even the unwelcome parts, you stop waiting for perfect conditions to show up. You realize you already have everything you need to begin. Premeditatio Malorum, the Stoic practice of anticipating obstacles, isn't about pessimism. It's about stripping fear of its power by shining a light on what could go wrong long before it does. Seneca put it this way: what is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster. Think of it as mental fire drills. When you've already walked through the worst-case scenario in your mind, you don't freeze when it happens, you act. This isn't inviting disaster, it's disarming it. Take a modern example. Imagine you're launching a creative project, a book, a podcast, a new product. The easy path is to fixate on the applause, the sales, the validation. But the Stoic asks a different question. What if the launch falls flat? What if the website crashes, the audience ignores it, or critics tear it apart? By rehearsing these scenarios, you do two things. First, you realize none of them are fatal. Second, you start crafting solutions in advance: backup servers, alternative marketing strategies, a mindset ready to learn from feedback rather than crumble under it. That's the clarity Premeditatio Malorum brings. Panic is what happens when you're blindsided. Preparation is what happens when you've already faced the storm in your mind. Consider how athletes use this. A runner doesn't just visualize crossing the finish line. They imagine cramping at mile 18, losing their pace group, or hitting a wall of rain. When those things happen, and they often do, they're ready. The same applies to your daily life. That difficult conversation you've been avoiding, play it out. What's the worst response you could receive? Now, how would you answer with calm and conviction? Suddenly, the obstacle feels smaller because you've already outmaneuvered it in your mind. Here's the key distinction. This isn't worry. Worry is cycling through fears helplessly. Premeditatio Malorum is strategic. It's asking, if this happens, then what? And having an answer. The Stoics didn't dwell on misfortune to suffer twice. They did it to ensure they'd only suffer once. So let's make it practical. Grab a notebook and write down one challenge looming on your horizon. Now list 3 ways it could go sideways. Next to each, jot a single action you'd take to pivot. That's the Stoic advantage, not avoiding reality, but mastering your response to it. Now turn it inward. What's the obstacle you've been reluctant to even name? The project you're afraid to start because failure feels too real. The goal you've delayed because the hurdles seem too high. Bring it into the light. The moment you stop running from what scares you is the moment you reclaim the focus it's been stealing. Because clarity isn't the absence of obstacles, it's the certainty that you're ready to meet them. Voluntary discomfort might sound counterintuitive in a world obsessed with convenience, but the Stoics understood something profound. Comfort is the enemy of growth. Take Cato the Younger, who famously wore simple, threadbare robes in Rome's Senate, slept on hard floors even when soft beds were available, and exposed himself to cold and hunger not because he had to, but because he chose to. Why? To prove to himself that happiness wasn't tied to external conditions. By deliberately embracing discomfort, he forged an unshakable discipline that made everyday distractions seem trivial. This practice wasn't about punishment, it was about empowerment. When you willingly step into minor hardships, you rewire your relationship with discomfort. Suddenly, that urge to check your phone every 5 minutes feels less like a craving and more like a choice you can override. Think of it like muscle memory. The more you train your mind to tolerate small deprivations, the easier it becomes to delay gratification for what truly matters. A modern parallel: the entrepreneur who turns down immediate profits to build a lasting brand, or the writer who silences social media to finish a manuscript. They're not denying themselves joy, they're investing in a deeper kind of fulfillment. Here's where it gets practical. Try a digital detox hour today: no screens, no scrolling, just you and a single task or moment of reflection. Notice the itch to reach for your phone, the restlessness that creeps in. That's the resistance Stoics trained themselves to face. Every time you observe that urge without yielding, you're not just avoiding distraction, you're strengthening your ability to focus on command. The discomfort is the workout, the discipline is the muscle, but it doesn't stop there. What if you took cold showers for a week, or skipped that afternoon snack, or walked instead of drove? These aren't tests of endurance, they're reminders that you're capable of more than your cravings suggest. The Stoic question isn't, how can I avoid hardship? It's, what can I endure and how will that change me? When you voluntarily step away from comforts, you're not losing anything. You're proving to yourself that focus isn't something you find. It's something you build, one small act of defiance against distraction at a time. So ask yourself, what comfort could you temporarily surrender to reclaim your attention? Maybe it's that extra hour of sleep traded for morning meditation, or the couch swapped for a run. The goal isn't austerity for its own sake, it's freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of just one more. Freedom to choose where your focus goes, because the less you're ruled by comfort, the more you'll discover an unexpected truth. Discipline isn't restrictive. It's the key to unlocking the life you actually want. The discipline of assent is where Stoic philosophy meets the split-second choices that shape your day. Epictetus laid it out plainly. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That reaction, the space between an event and your response, is where focus is either preserved or squandered. Think of it like a mental checkpoint. A notification pings on your phone. The Stoic doesn't lurch for it instinctively. They pause and ask, is this worthy of my attention right now? That moment of hesitation might seem small, but it's the difference between a day of intentional action and a day lost to reflexive distractions. Picture this: you're mid-flow on a project when a colleague sends a terse email. Your chest tightens, fingers hover over the keyboard to fire back a reply. Here's where the discipline of assent intervenes. Instead of treating that initial impression, anger, defensiveness, as truth, you examine it. Is this email truly an emergency, or can it wait? Is my reaction proportional, or am I being hijacked by pride? This isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about refusing to let unchecked impulses dictate your priorities. Every time you skip this step, you risk derailing hours of productivity to soothe a momentary irritation. Social media is a masterclass in this struggle. You open an app just for a second, and suddenly 30 minutes vanish. Why? Because the initial impression, I need a break or this might be important, went unchallenged. The Stoic remedy: train yourself to interrogate those urges. Before clicking, ask, what value does this serve? If the answer is none, you've just reclaimed your focus with a single question. Now reflect, when did a knee-jerk reaction recently cost you? Maybe it was snapping at a loved one and spending the afternoon repairing the damage, or abandoning a workout because the first few minutes felt hard. These are the hidden taxes of unexamined impulses, but here's the good news. The more you practice pausing even for 3 breaths before reacting, the clearer it becomes. Not every thought deserves your allegiance, not every impression merits action, and when you master that discernment, you'll find something remarkable. The distractions don't disappear, but their power over you does. Your focus becomes a choice, not an accident. Epictetus called this the first and greatest victory, conquering the automatic mind. It starts small. Next time your phone buzzes, let it. When frustration flares, watch it like a passing cloud. These are the reps that build mental muscle. Because true productivity isn't about doing more. It's about deciding with unwavering clarity what deserves your yes and having the courage to say no to the rest. Marcus Aurelius never intended his private journal to become one of history's most revered books. He wrote those words at night by candlelight for himself alone, a practice of untangling the day's chaos and returning to clarity. That's the power of Stoic journaling. It's not about crafting perfect prose, but about confronting your thoughts with honesty and refining them with purpose. Think of it as mental decluttering. Every entry is a chance to ask what truly mattered today, where did my focus serve me, and where did it betray me? Start with 3 simple prompts, the same ones Seneca and Epictetus used in their own ways. First, wins not just accomplishments, but moments where you exercised discipline, where you chose focus over distraction. Maybe you resisted checking email during deep work or paused before reacting to criticism. These are your proof points, evidence that progress is happening in small, daily acts. Next, lessons the stumbles that taught you something. Perhaps you lost hours to social media and noticed how hollow it felt afterward, or realized how much energy you waste worrying about hypotheticals. Stoicism transforms these observations into fuel when you write them down without judgment. Finally, intentions, not vague goals like be more productive, but specific actions. Tomorrow, I'll work in 90-minute blocks with my phone in another room, or when stress arises, I'll take 3 breaths before responding. This is how journaling bridges reflection and action. Try this for just 7 days. Each evening, spend 10 minutes with these prompts. You'll begin to spot patterns, the distractions that masquerade as urgency, the thoughts that loop without adding value. That's the magic of putting pen to paper. It forces vague unease into sharp focus. Marcus didn't write, "I'm overwhelmed." He dissected why, tracing his anxiety to its roots. You can do the same with modern struggles. That notification addiction, write it down, and suddenly it's not an invisible habit. It's a choice you're making, one you can unmake. Here's the question to carry into your first entry. What's one recurring thought that deserves questioning? Is it, "I don't have enough time," or "This task has to be perfect"? Write it, then challenge it like a Stoic would. Is it true? Is it useful? If not, what thought might serve you better? This isn't navel-gazing, it's precision tooling for the mind. Because when you examine your thoughts daily, you stop being ruled by them. You start choosing where your attention goes, 1 page at a time. Negative visualization sounds like the opposite of productivity. Why imagine losing what you cherish? Yet Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, practiced this daily. He'd close his eyes and picture his villa burned to the ground, his status stripped away, even the death of loved ones. Not to dwell in gloom, but to awaken to a startling truth. Everything we assume is permanent is already vanishing. The modern parallel, try this. Imagine your phone suddenly gone, not just misplaced, but irretrievable. No contacts, no notes, no last-minute searches. For a moment, your chest tightens. Then something unexpected happens. You start recalling phone numbers you'd forgotten. You notice how present you become in conversations when you can't escape into a screen. The crutch is gone, and suddenly, you're standing on your own focus. This isn't about pessimism, it's about precision. When Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality," he revealed how casually we take our greatest gifts for granted: health, time, relationships, until they're threatened. Modern life bombards us with the opposite message: more is better, upgrade, accumulate. But Stoic loss meditation asks a different question: what if less is enough? Picture a musician whose concert hall goes silent mid-performance. At first, panic. Then they hear something new, the raw power of their voice alone, the audience breathing together in the dark. Distractions fall away, and what remains is pure artistry. Here's the practice. Carve out 5 minutes today to visualize losing one modern convenience you rely on: your laptop, your car, even electricity. Not as a fear exercise, but as a spotlight. What would you actually miss? The constant news updates, or the ability to video call your parents, the social media scrolling, or the notes app where you draft ideas? Negative visualization cuts through the noise of wanting to show you what's truly worth your attention. Materialism tricks us into believing focus is a resource we lack. Stoicism reveals it's a choice we've misplaced. That notification you reflexively check, what if it vanished tomorrow? Would your life be poorer or freer? The answer isn't universal, it's personal. Which is why this practice isn't about rejecting tools, but reclaiming agency over them. So tonight, as you charge your devices, try this counterintuitive ritual: unplug mentally before you plug in physically. Ask yourself, if I lost this tomorrow, what would I do differently today? The clarity you'll find isn't deprivation, it's direction. Because when you stop assuming permanence, you start noticing what's already here, already enough, already worthy of your undivided focus. Alexander the Great faced what seemed like an insurmountable obstacle when he reached the city of Gordium. The legend was clear: whoever could untie the impossibly complex Gordian knot would rule all of Asia. Most leaders would have spent years picking at the tangled ropes, paralyzed by the fear of failure. But Alexander saw the problem differently. With one swift strike of his sword, he sliced through the knot, not because he took the easy way out, but because he realized the obstacle itself contained the solution. The Stoic mantra, "the obstacle is the way," isn't just poetic encouragement. It's a radical reframe that turns barriers into breakthroughs. Creative blocks, missed deadlines, technical glitches. We treat these like enemies, but the Stoics would argue they're actually guides. Imagine you're a writer staring at a blank page, or an entrepreneur hitting a funding wall. The instinct is to retreat, to wait for better conditions. But what if the frustration you're resisting is the exact friction needed to sharpen your approach? The Roman general Fabius Maximus didn't defeat Hannibal's superior army by meeting it head-on. He used delay tactics, turning the enemy's strength into a weakness. Your obstacle isn't blocking your path, it's revealing a new one. Take a modern example. A software developer encounters a bug that crashes her app. She could rage against the glitch, or she could ask the Stoic question: what is this teaching me? Maybe it exposes a flaw in her testing process, or pushes her to learn a new debugging tool. The obstacle becomes the curriculum. This mindset shift isn't just about resilience, it's about recognizing that the most frustrating hurdles often force us to innovate in ways we'd never consider otherwise. The painter who runs out of blue pigment discovers a stunning new palette in the colors she has left. So here's your challenge. Think of one obstacle you've been sidestepping, a difficult conversation, a skill you've been avoiding, a project that feels stuck. Now, instead of asking, "How do I remove this?" ask, "How could this be my Gordian knot?" What if the solution isn't in untangling it perfectly, but in seeing it from a new angle? Commit to one small step today. Draft that awkward email, research the first tutorial, or break the problem into pieces so tiny they're impossible to fear. The Stoics didn't conquer obstacles by pretending they didn't hurt. They conquered them by refusing to let pain dictate their next move. Your obstacle isn't the enemy. It's the way forward if you're willing to look at it differently. Stoic mindfulness or prosoch isn't about emptying your mind, it's about filling it with purpose. While modern mindfulness often emphasizes detachment from thoughts, the Stoics practiced something sharper, a vigilant guardianship over where attention lands. Epictetus likened it to a night watchman standing at the gates of a city, questioning every impression that seeks entry. Is this true? Is this necessary? Imagine applying that level of scrutiny to your daily distractions. The ping of a new email, the itch to scroll, the nagging worry about tomorrow. Each would face the same challenge. Does this deserve passage into my mind? This isn't passive awareness, it's active curation. Modern deep work Guru Cal Newport champions focused attention, but the Stoics went further. For them, focus wasn't just a productivity tool, it was a moral act. Every moment of scattered attention wasn't merely inefficient, it was a betrayal of your potential. Picture a sculptor not just avoiding interruptions, but rejecting every chisel stroke that doesn't serve the vision. That's prosoch, treating your focus as sacred because it shapes who you become. Here's how to bridge ancient rigor with modern life. Start your day with a Stoic intention ritual. Before reaching for your phone, ask, what's one task today that warrants my full presence? Not a to-do list item, but a keystone action, the kind that, if done with undistracted excellence, makes everything else easier. For Marcus Aurelius, it might have been drafting a law with clarity. For you, it could be the project proposal you've been avoiding, the tough conversation you've postponed, or even 30 minutes of uninterrupted play with your child. Name it, write it down, then, like Epictetus' watchman, defend that intention fiercely. The difference between Stoic and modern mindfulness: one invites you to observe your thoughts, the other demands you judge them. When a distraction arises, don't just notice it, interrogate it. Does this align with my intention? If not, dismiss it not with frustration, but with the calm authority of someone who's decided what matters. Over time, this shifts focus from something you lose to something you choose. So here's your challenge. Pick one task today, just one, and treat it like a Stoic would. Silence notifications, clear your workspace, and begin as if this were the only work you'd be remembered for. When your mind wanders, and it will, gently guide it back with the question, is this where I pledged my attention? The goal isn't perfection. It's the quiet pride of knowing that, in a world designed to fragment your focus, you held the line, one intentional moment at a time. Seneca's piercing words on the shortness of life cut to the core of modern distraction. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. The Stoics didn't just preach focus, they practiced radical subtraction, stripping away everything that diluted their purpose. Think of it like pruning a tree. You don't just add water and hope for the best. You deliberately remove the dead branches so the living ones can thrive. Minimalism for the Stoics wasn't an aesthetic choice, it was a survival tactic. Every commitment, possession, or habit that didn't serve their highest aims was clutter, and clutter was the enemy of clarity. Consider how much of your day is spent on autopilot, scrolling through apps, attending meetings that could have been emails, chasing goals you inherited rather than chose. These aren't just time wasters, they're attention thieves. Seneca called them borrowed desires, pursuits we adopt because everyone else is running toward them. The antidote: audit your life like a Stoic sculptor chiseling marble. Chip away one non-essential at a time until what remains is only what deserves your energy. Start small but significant. That app you open reflexively, the one that leaves you feeling hollow after 20 minutes of comparison, delete it, not forever, but for 30 days. Notice what happens. At first, your fingers will itch for the familiar distraction. Then something unexpected emerges, space to read, to think, to notice how much of your mental bandwidth was hijacked by something you never consciously invited in. This isn't about deprivation, it's about reclamation. The Stoics knew that every no to the trivial is a yes to the meaningful, but subtraction goes deeper than digital detox. Examine your commitments, that weekly obligation you dread, the one you justify with "I should." What if you stopped? Would your world collapse, or would you suddenly find hours for the project you've been postponing? The Roman statesman Cato intentionally wore shabby clothing to Senate meetings, not as a stunt, but to remind himself that respectability wasn't tied to appearances. What modern should can you shed to expose the same truth? Here's the challenge. Grab a sheet of paper and draw 2 columns. Label one adds light, the other drains energy. List your daily routines, apps, even relationships. Be ruthless. Does scrolling news feeds leave you informed or anxious? Does that monthly networking event spark connections or exhaustion? The goal isn't to judge, but to see clearly, because you can't refine your focus until you know what's clouding it. The art of subtraction isn't about living with less, it's about making room for more of what matters. When you remove the noise, you hear the music. When you silence the chatter, you finally hear your own voice. So ask yourself, what's one thing, just one, you can remove this week to create space for the work, the people, the life that truly deserves your attention? The answer might surprise you. Memento Mori, the practice of remembering your mortality, isn't meant to be morbid. It's a Stoic wake-up call, a way to strip life down to its essentials. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." That's not fear talking, it's clarity. When you truly internalize that your time is finite, something shifts. The meetings that could have been emails, the grudges you've been nursing, the projects you've postponed, until things calm down, suddenly they reveal their true weight. Or lack of it. Consider 2 versions of yourself. One spends hours scrolling through comments, agonizing over likes, or rearranging tasks without ever starting. The other, the one who's viscerally aware that time is slipping, asks sharper questions. Does this matter? Will I care about this on my deathbed? The first version gets stuck in trivial worries. The second builds legacy-focused work. The difference isn't effort, it's perspective. The Stoics didn't dwell on death to paralyze themselves. They did it to cut through the noise. Try this weekly ritual. Set aside 10 minutes to meditate on impermanence. Not as a dark fantasy, but as a clarifying lens. Picture yourself at the end of your life, looking back. What will you regret not doing? The trips you didn't take, or the conversations you avoided? Probably not. More likely, it's the dreams you sidelined for practicality, the love you withheld out of pride, the time you lost to half-hearted distractions. Now flip the script. What would make that future version of you nod and say, "Yes, I lived well"? That's your compass. Here's the paradox. When you stop pretending you have forever, you start acting like you have now. A modern example, the entrepreneur who stops chasing vanity metrics and focuses on work that outlasts them. The parent who puts down their phone to really listen. The artist who ships their project instead of endlessly polishing it. Mortality isn't a threat, it's the ultimate prioritization tool. So ask yourself, if this were your last year, what would you stop tolerating? What would you finally start? Not grand bucket list gestures, but daily choices. Maybe it's ending that draining friendship, or writing the first page of the book you've been ghostwriting in your head. Memento Mori isn't about counting days, it's about making days count. And when you do, you'll find a strange freedom. The trivial falls away, and what remains is the work and the people that truly deserve you. The view from above is one of the most powerful and humbling Stoic exercises. Marcus Aurelius practiced it regularly, urging himself to look down from above at the sprawling cities, the tiny figures below, the vastness of time and space. Seen from this vantage point, even the grandest human conflicts shrink to insignificance. What feels like an emergency in the moment becomes a speck in the cosmic timeline. This isn't about dismissing your struggles, it's about seeing them in proportion. Modern astronauts experience something eerily similar, the overview effect. When they gaze at Earth from orbit, national borders vanish, petty disputes seem absurd, and what remains is breathtaking clarity about what truly matters. Now apply this to your own life, that project making your chest tighten, the deadline looming like a tidal wave. Zoom out, picture yourself 5 years from now looking back. Will this stressor even register, or will it be a footnote in a larger story of growth? The Stoics weren't suggesting we ignore challenges, they were teaching us to stop inflating them beyond their true size. A writer obsessing over a single sentence might benefit from remembering the hundreds of pages they've already conquered. A startup founder drowning in logistics could pause to recall why they launched in the first place. Perspective doesn't erase difficulty, it prevents overwhelm from distorting reality. Here's how to practice it today. Pick one current stressor, a work conflict, a creative block, a financial worry. Now mentally fast forward. 5 years from now, will this issue have reshaped your life, or will it be a lesson that strengthened you? The answer isn't always obvious. Some challenges do alter trajectories, but the act of asking recalibrates your focus. The entrepreneur sweating a failed product launch might realize it was the catalyst for a pivot that led to something better. The student agonizing over a single exam could see it as one checkpoint in a lifelong education. The magic of this exercise lies in its dual effect. It doesn't just shrink anxieties, it expands vision. When you stop seeing your obstacles in isolation, you start spotting patterns, the resilience you've built through past struggles, the unexpected gains hidden in previous failures. NASA astronauts returned to Earth with a renewed sense of purpose, not because space solved their problems, but because distance gave them clarity. You don't need a rocket to achieve that. You just need the courage to step back and the wisdom to see that most storms look smaller from altitude. So here's your invitation. The next time a problem feels all-consuming, borrow the Stoic's vantage point. Climb above it in your mind. Notice how the view changes when you're no longer standing in the middle of the chaos. What looked like a mountain might just be a stepping stone. And that realization that you're capable of both facing the struggle and rising above it is where true focus begins. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who shaped Epictetus, put it bluntly, "What is the point of knowing what is good if you don't do what is good?" Stoic decision-making isn't about endless deliberation. It's about creating a compass so clear that choices align with your principles almost instinctively. Imagine standing at a career crossroads. One path offers prestige and security, the other feels riskier but truer to your values. The modern world would tell you to weigh salary, benefits, and promotions. The Stoics would ask something radically different. Which option makes you more courageous, more just, more like the person you aspire to become? This is the essence of the Stoic decision framework, a litmus test for every choice, big or small. First, justice. Does this harm or help others? The promotion that requires stepping on colleagues might advance your career, but at what cost to your integrity? Next, courage. Am I choosing comfort over growth? Staying in a soul-crushing job because it's safe isn't humility. It's fear disguised as practicality. Then, temperance. Is this decision driven by excess or balance? Chasing endless wealth at the expense of health or relationships fails the test. Finally, wisdom. Am I seeing this situation clearly or through the lens of ego or insecurity? The Stoics called these the four cardinal virtues, not abstract ideals, but practical filters for every crossroad. Consider a real-world example. A designer offered a lucrative project for a company whose ethics clash with hers. The paycheck could solve her debts, but the work conflicts with her belief in sustainability. The Stoic approach doesn't dismiss practical needs. It insists they be weighed against deeper truths. She might ask, can I take the money without compromising my self-respect? Is there a third option I haven't considered, like negotiating for a more ethical role within the company? Virtue isn't about purity, it's about creative problem solving within your principles. Here's how to apply this today. Think of a recent decision you've been wrestling with, whether to confront a friend, change jobs, or even how to spend your evening. Now run it through the Stoic test. Justice, who does this choice serve? Courage, does it demand growth or retreat? Temperance, is it balanced or extreme? Wisdom, am I seeing the whole picture? The answers might surprise you. That argument you've been avoiding could be an act of courage. The productive task you're fixating on might just be procrastination in disguise. The Stoics knew something we often forget. Every decision is a brick in the foundation of your character. The small choices, how you react to criticism, where you direct your attention, what you tolerate, shape you as much as the life-altering ones. Musonius Rufus taught that philosophy isn't about debating ideas, but being the sort of person your reasoning convinces you to be. So tonight, as you review your day, ask not just what did I accomplish, but who did I become in the process? The gap between those answers is where Stoic decision-making begins. Seneca's mornings didn't begin with frantic scrolls through notifications or half-asleep coffee gulps. They started with silence. Before the sun rose, he'd light a lamp, take out his journal, and ask himself a single question: what evil will I disarm today? Not what will I achieve. Not how will I impress, but how will I strengthen my character. This was the Stoic secret to transforming routine from mindless repetition into a daily rebellion against chaos. Because discipline isn't about rigidity, it's about creating pockets of intention so strong they shape the entire day. Picture two versions of your morning. One begins with a jolt, an alarm silenced, email skimmed in bed, a rush to react before you've even fully awakened. The other starts like Seneca's, 5 minutes of stillness, a moment to name your priorities, a deliberate pause before the world's demands crash in. The difference isn't time, it's design. The Stoics didn't worship routines because they loved rules. They worshipped them because rituals are the leash we put on distraction, the way we tell our minds, this is where we begin, not where we drift. Here's what a Stoic morning might look like today. First, meditatio, not the modern version with apps and timers, but the ancient practice of rehearsing the day's challenges. Close your eyes and visualize the difficult conversation ahead, the project that intimidates you, the triggers that test your patience. See them clearly, then see yourself navigating them with calm. Next, planning, but not a sprawling to-do list. The Stoics would ask you to circle just 3 tasks aligned with your highest aim. Not answer all emails, but draft the proposal that moves my career forward. Not clean the house, but have one meaningful conversation with my child. Finally, gratitude not as a fluffy affirmation, but as armor. Marcus Aurelius wrote, when you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. That's not poetry, it's psychological preparation. Gratitude shrinks petty irritations before they hijack your focus. Now, contrast this with the average modern morning, a blur of snoozed alarms, skipped breakfasts, and scrolling through other people's highlight reels before you've even brushed your teeth. The Stoics would call this voluntary servitude, handing over your first and freshest hours to anything but your own sovereignty. Chaos isn't just disorder, it's the cumulative cost of unmade decisions. So here's your challenge: steal one Stoic ritual this week. Maybe it's writing "What evil will I disarm today" on a notepad by your bed, or sitting with your tea for 60 seconds before checking your phone. Tiny, yes, transformative, absolutely, because rituals are the hinges of discipline, small, sturdy, and capable of swinging open entire days of focused intention. The question isn't whether you have routines, it's whether your routines have you. Epictetus once told a story about a man who dropped and shattered his favorite vase. The man stood frozen, devastated, until Epictetus remarked, "It was the vase's nature to break. It's your nature to grieve, but only for a moment." That's cognitive distancing in action, the ability to observe your thoughts like broken pottery on the ground, acknowledging their presence without letting them dictate your next move. Modern psychology calls this diffusion, a stepping back from mental chatter so it loses its chokehold. The Stoics mastered it centuries ago by labeling thoughts as mere impressions, not truths. When frustration whispers you'll never finish this project, cognitive distancing replies, there's the "I'm a failure" impression again. The thought doesn't vanish, but its power does. Negative self-talk thrives in the shadows of immediacy when we mistake passing mental weather for permanent climate. Picture a programmer staring at a bug-filled screen. The thought "I'm terrible at this" feels like fact, but with Stoic distancing it becomes "I'm having the I'm terrible" impression. That slight shift from "I am" to "I'm experiencing" creates just enough space to ask, is this useful? If not, you're free to set it aside like a misdelivered package. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, writing, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind." He wasn't suggesting we control every thought. He was teaching us to curate which ones we entertain. Try this today. When a harsh inner critic pipes up during work, tag it with impression. "I'll embarrass myself during this presentation" becomes "I'm noticing the fear of embarrassment" impression. It's not about positive thinking, it's about accurate thinking. Emotions are real, but the stories we attach to them are often fiction. The Stoics compared thoughts to clouds, some dark, some light, all passing. You don't argue with thunder, you wait it out. Similarly, that wave of "I'm not good enough" isn't a verdict, it's weather, and weather changes. Now reflect, what recurring thought hijacks your focus most? Is it "I don't have enough time" or "they'll think I'm incompetent"? Write it down, then practice the Stoic double take. Is this an immutable truth or just an impression passing through? The first time you catch yourself mid-spiral and think, there's my old friend imposter syndrome again, you'll feel something unexpected: freedom. Not because the thought disappears, but because you finally stopped mistaking it for reality. That's the power of distance. It turns mental noise into background static, leaving your focus clear and your hands free to build what matters. The Stoics didn't just preach discipline, they lived it, and their lives became blueprints for focus under fire. Take Cato the Younger, the Roman senator who stood alone against corruption while others compromised. When bribes and threats failed to sway him, his enemies resorted to public mockery, spreading rumors to tarnish his reputation. But Cato's response was Stoicism in action. He doubled down on integrity, not because it was easy, but because his principles weren't negotiable. Imagine applying that same unwavering focus to modern distractions. Every time you refuse to cut corners at work or choose honesty over convenience, you're channeling Cato's discipline, proving that focus isn't just about productivity, but about who you become in the process. Then there's Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, whose entire philosophy was born from catastrophe. After losing his fortune in a shipwreck, he didn't drown in self-pity. He turned to studying philosophy in Athens, building a school of thought that would outlast empires. His obstacle became his origin story. Modern parallels are everywhere: the entrepreneur who pivots after a failed venture, the artist who transforms rejection into sharper work. Zeno's lesson: disruption isn't the end of focus, it's the test of it. When your plans crumble, do you scatter your energy blaming the waves or anchor yourself in what can't be sunk? But Stoic role models aren't just ancient history. Look around today: the teacher who stays patient with struggling students, the nurse who maintains compassion in chaotic wards, the programmer who debugs code through the night without shortcuts. These are modern Catos and Zeno's people who embodied discipline not for applause, but because it's who they've chosen to be. The key is to study them actively. When you encounter someone whose focus inspires you, don't just admire, dissect. How do they structure their days? What do they ignore? How do they rebound from setbacks? Mentors don't need to be famous. They just need to live the qualities you're cultivating. Here's your challenge: identify one person, real or historical, who exemplifies the discipline you lack. Maybe it's Marcus Aurelius, calm amid chaos, or a colleague who consistently delivers work early without burnout. Now go deeper than inspiration. Reverse engineer their habits. If it's their resilience, how might you reframe your next failure as they would? If it's their integrity, what's one small choice today where you'd follow their example? Role models aren't idols to worship. They're mirrors showing you what's possible when focus meets practice. The gap between you and them isn't talent, it's daily decisions. So borrow their resolve until it becomes your own. After all, the Stoics weren't born disciplined. They chose again and again to stand like Cato and adapt like Zeno until their choices carved their character. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be one." That command cuts to the heart of Stoic virtue, not as abstract ideals, but as daily practices that shape how we work, create, and focus. The four cardinal virtues, courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom, aren't just moral compass points. They're productivity superpowers waiting to be unlocked. Let's start with courage, the virtue modern work culture often forgets. It's not just about bold risks or public speaking. It's the quiet strength to say no to trivial demands so you can say yes to meaningful work. Picture a designer declining a lucrative but soul-draining project to protect creative space for her passion project. That's not irresponsibility. It's the courage to honor your true priorities. Temperance, often misunderstood as deprivation, is really about mastery. It's the ability to stop scrolling when your focus wanes, to walk away from the inbox after hitting send, to recognize that more hours don't equal better work. The Stoics compared temperance to an archer's discipline, knowing when to draw the bow and when to release. A modern knowledge worker might channel this by scheduling deep work blocks with the same rigor as meetings, treating attention as a finite resource to be allocated wisely. Justice in productivity isn't about fairness in the conventional sense, it's about contribution. Are your efforts serving something larger than your ego? The software engineer who writes cleaner code than required, not for praise but because it's right, embodies this. Marcus Aurelius called justice the source of all other virtues, because when our work aligns with service, distractions lose their grip. Wisdom ties them all together, the discernment to know when to push and when to pause, which battles merit your energy and which are vanity. Think of a founder rejecting rapid scaling to preserve company culture, or a writer cutting a beloved paragraph because it doesn't serve the story. That's practical wisdom in action. So here's the question only you can answer. Which virtue feels most urgent for your work right now? Is it the courage to set boundaries, the temperance to step away from burnout's edge, the justice to create work that matters beyond metrics, or the wisdom to distinguish between motion and progress? The Stoics didn't chase balance, they pursued alignment. When your daily choices reflect these virtues, productivity stops being about output and starts being about integrity. And that's when the real work begins. The Stoics understood something modern science is only now confirming. Willpower isn't an infinite well. It's a fragile reservoir, easily drained by the 1,000 small choices we make without thinking. Seneca warned, "Your mind will be like its habitual thoughts, for the soul becomes dyed with the color of its pursuits." Every time you deliberate over what to eat for lunch, agonize over replying to a trivial email, or scroll aimlessly debating whether to stop, you're not just killing time. You're hemorrhaging the very energy you'll need when real challenges arise. This is Stoic energy management in its purest form, recognizing that focus isn't just about directing attention, but about fiercely guarding the mental fuel required to sustain it. Decision fatigue isn't a modern invention, it's human nature. The Roman general Scipio Africanus didn't exhaust himself debating which armor to wear or what route to march. He established routines so his willpower would be reserved for battlefield judgments that mattered. Today, we face a different kind of siege, endless micro-decisions that chip away at our clarity. The 20% rule, keeping a reserve of mental energy for crises, wasn't written by a productivity guru. It was lived by Stoics like Epictetus, who trained himself to respond to insults with calm, not because he lacked passion, but because he refused to spend his limited emotional bandwidth on what didn't deserve it. Here's where ancient wisdom meets modern strategy: batching trivial tasks, answering emails in one focused burst, meal prepping on Sundays, automating routine choices isn't just efficiency. It's a Stoic act of preservation. Think of Steve Jobs' black turtleneck or Barack Obama's pared-down wardrobe. They weren't avoiding style. They were eliminating decision clutter to conserve willpower for weightier matters. The same principle applies to your work. That hour you spend jumping between Slack messages and half-written documents, it's not just unproductive, it's actively sabotaging your ability to dive deep when it counts. So let's diagnose the leaks. Where is your mental energy seeping out unnoticed? Is it the 20 minutes each morning lost to choosing an outfit, or the compulsive inbox checks that fracture your focus every 15 minutes? Maybe it's the mental gymnastics of rehearsing conversations that will never happen, or the exhaustion of pretending to multitask when neuroscience confirms it's a myth. The Stoic remedy starts with awareness. Carry a notepad today and tally every time you switch tasks unnecessarily. You'll likely discover your willpower isn't weak, it's just been ambushed by 100 tiny surrenders you never noticed. The solution isn't rigidity, it's ruthless prioritization. Reserve your peak energy slots those first 2 hours after waking, when willpower is freshest for your most demanding work. Schedule shallow tasks like administrative work during natural energy dips, and most importantly, build buffers. Marcus Aurelius didn't fill every moment with activity. He carved out space for reflection because he knew a mind constantly in motion has no room to discern what truly matters. Your energy is currency. Spend it where it yields returns, not where it evaporates into the void of busyness. Ask yourself this: if you had to face a real crisis today, a creative breakthrough, a family emergency, a career-defining opportunity, would you have enough focus left in the tank to meet it? Or would you be running on empty, your reserves depleted by trivialities? The Stoics didn't conserve energy to hoard it. They conserved it to deploy it where it could alter destinies. Your attention is no different. Protect it like the finite resource it is. and watch how much further it carries you when it's not being siphoned away by what never really mattered. Seneca never encountered a smartphone, but his warning about crowds rings eerily prescient today. The mob is no company. It's just a noise. Swap mob for your social media feed, and the parallel becomes clear. Our devices have become the modern agora, a whirlwind of voices vying for attention, often leaving us more fractured than fulfilled. Digital Stoicism isn't about rejecting technology. It's about reclaiming sovereignty over how you engage with it. Imagine your phone as a Stoic tool rather than a slot machine. Each interaction a deliberate choice, not a reflexive grab for dopamine. The difference lies in intention. When Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do," he might as well have been drafting a user manual for the mindful digital age. Start with notifications, those relentless taps on the shoulder from apps desperate for your gaze. Every ping is a tiny theft, fragmenting focus like light through a prism. The Stoic solution: silence the unnecessary. Picture a writer who disables all alerts except messages from her editor. Her phone no longer interrupts, it serves. This isn't austerity, it's architecture. Just as Marcus Aurelius designed his mornings around reflection rather than reaction, you can design your tech to support depth rather than derail it. Cal Newport's digital minimalism echoes this ancient wisdom. Tools exist to serve your goals, not to hijack your attention, but the challenge runs deeper than toggling settings. Social media thrives on what the Stoics called Premeditatio, those initial, involuntary reactions: outrage, envy, FOMO that cloud judgment. Scrolling through curated highlight reels triggers the same primal comparison Seneca observed in Roman elites. They suffer more than necessary because they anticipate their suffering. The antidote: pre-commitment. Before opening an app, ask, what's my purpose here? Information, connection, or mindless escape? If the answer doesn't align with your values, close the tab. The Stoics didn't avoid the marketplace. They walked through it with purpose, wallets clasped firmly shut unless a worthy purchase beckoned. Apply that same discernment to your digital marketplace. Consider the paradox of your screen time report. It likely reveals hours spent on apps that leave you feeling hollow, yet the habit persists. Why? Because, as Seneca noted, we are more often frightened than hurt. We fear missing out, so we sacrifice presence. Try this experiment for one day. Log every tech interaction in 2 columns, purposeful and passive. The disparity will shock you. Then channel Epictetus' Discipline of Assent. Don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. That impulse to check your phone isn't a command, it's a suggestion you can decline. The Stoic smartphone isn't a mythical device, it's your current one, wielded with intention. It's the artist who keeps her phone in another room while painting, the executive who bans devices from dinner tables, the student who reads philosophy on his Kindle instead of doom scrolling. Their tech use isn't governed by default settings but by deliberate design. So here's the challenge: identify one digital habit that quietly erodes your clarity. Is it the morning scroll that hijacks your first thoughts? The YouTube autoplay that bleeds hours? Whatever it is, apply the Stoic pause. Next time the urge strikes, stand still for 3 breaths. In that space, you'll find something revolutionary: the power to choose, because focus isn't something you lose, it's something you surrender, one unconscious click at a time. Epictetus left us a simple but radical idea. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. That pause, barely a heartbeat long, is where Stoic discipline transforms from philosophy into lived experience. Picture this: you've just received an email that makes your jaw tighten. The sender's tone feels dismissive, the critique unjust. Your fingers fly to the keyboard, poised to fire back a reply that would feel satisfying in the moment but might haunt you by afternoon. This is where the Stoic pause intervenes, not by suppressing the emotion, but by creating just enough distance to ask, is this reaction serving me, or am I about to hand over my peace to someone else's carelessness? The magic lies in the mechanics. When frustration flares, your body reacts before your mind catches up, shoulders tense, breath shallow, pulse quick. The Stoics knew this physiological hijack couldn't be stopped, but it could be observed. Try this now. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 6. That 12-second reset is long enough for cortisol levels to dip and clarity to reassert itself. Ancient warriors used this breath to steady their hands before battle. Modern professionals can use it to steady their keystrokes before hitting send. Create a personal pause phrase, a mental checkpoint that snaps you back to intention. Marcus Aurelius might have whispered, "This too is for my training." For you, it could be, "Is this necessary?" or "What's the wiser response?" The words matter less than the habit they instill, interrupting autopilot before it crashes your focus. Think of a recent moment when a pause changed everything. Maybe it was resisting the urge to correct a colleague in a meeting, only to realize their idea had merit. Or walking away from a heated discussion, only to find the solution emerged in the silence that followed. The pause isn't passivity, it's precision. A musician who rushes the beat ruins the composition. A sculptor who strikes without looking chips the marble, and a mind that reacts without pausing sacrifices long-term clarity for short-term relief. Epictetus didn't suggest we eliminate anger. He taught us to disarm it by widening that critical gap between trigger and action. So here's your challenge. Tomorrow, choose one interaction, an email, a conversation, even a social media comment, and insert a deliberate pause. Breathe. Whisper your phrase, then ask, "Is this how the best version of myself would respond?" You'll discover something profound. Most provocations don't demand a reaction at all. They're just tests waiting to see if you'll trade your focus for their chaos. The pause is your refusal to pay that price. Seneca's nightly ritual was as unglamorous as it was transformative. Before sleep claimed him, he'd sit with his journal and replay the day like a stern but fair judge, not to berate himself, but to measure the gap between his principles and his actions. "What evil did you cure today?" he'd write. "What vice did you resist?" This wasn't self-punishment. It was Stoic accountability in its purest form, a daily audit of where his focus had truly gone. Imagine applying that same ruthless clarity to your own distractions. How many hours were spent on autopilot, reacting instead of choosing? How often did convenience masquerade as progress? Modern life thrives on avoidance. We skim performance reviews, deflect constructive criticism, and mute uncomfortable truths with endless scrolling. But the Stoics recognized a hard truth: growth requires friction. Think of a sculptor assessing her work mid-creation, turning the clay, spotting uneven edges, and making adjustments before the piece hardens. Without that honest examination, the final product warps. Your focus is no different. Every unchecked excuse, "I'll start tomorrow," "This meeting doesn't matter," "I work better under pressure," is a dent in your discipline, quietly bending your potential out of shape. Here's where the Stoic practice of hyponemata, a personal memoranda, becomes a weapon against self-deception. Once a week, carve out 20 minutes for what I call an integrity check. Grab a notebook and divide the page into 3 columns. First, intentions, what you vowed to prioritize, e.g., deep work mornings, no phone after 8 p.m. Next, reality, how you actually spent your time, e.g., scrolled Instagram for 40 minutes during writing block. Finally, excuses, the stories you told yourself to justify the gap. "I needed a break." The goal isn't shame, it's pattern recognition. A startup founder might discover he's avoiding investor calls under the guise of perfecting the pitch deck. A student might see research was actually 5 hours of tangential Wikipedia spirals. The magic lies in the follow-up question Seneca asked himself each night: what will you mend tomorrow? Not vague resolutions like be better, but surgical corrections: place phone in drawer during first work block, or reply to difficult email before noon. Accountability without action is just self-flagellation. The Stoics paired their examinations with immediate, tangible adjustments. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be." B1, he was demanding that awareness morph into behavior. Now turn the lens inward. What's one area where you've been conflating motion with progress? Is it the busy work that fills your days but empties your sense of achievement? The goals you redefine downward when they prove harder than expected? The feedback you dismiss because it stings? Stoic accountability begins the moment you trade "Why is this happening to me?" for "What is this revealing about me?" That shift from victim to architect is where excuses crumble and focus sharpens, because the person you're most accountable to isn't your boss, your audience, or even Seneca. It's the future version of yourself waiting to thank you or wonder why you didn't try harder. The Stoics understood something modern science now confirms: discipline compounds. It's not the grand, sweeping gestures that shape a life, but the quiet, daily repetitions, the moments when you choose focus over distraction, principle over convenience, again and again, until those choices become who you are. Picture an oak tree and a reed in a storm. The reed bends instantly to the wind, flexible but fragile. The oak stands firm, not because it resists the storm, but because decades of growth have woven resilience into its very fibers. That's the essence of Stoic discipline, not rigid perfection, but steady, incremental strength. Consider skill building. A musician doesn't master scales in a day. She practices them daily until her fingers move without thought. A writer doesn't wait for inspiration. He shows up at the page even when the words feel like mud, trusting that consistency is the forge where brilliance is shaped. The same applies to health. One salad won't transform your body, but 30 days of choosing nourishment over impulse rewires cravings. One workout won't build endurance, but a month of lacing up your shoes when motivation is absent builds something deeper: identity. You're no longer someone who tries to exercise, you're someone who does. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up one morning with the wisdom to lead an empire. His journals reveal the truth. He wrote to himself daily, wrestling with weaknesses, refining his thoughts like a blacksmith tempering steel. Every entry was a deposit in the bank of his character, and over time the interest compounded. Modern research calls this the aggregation of marginal gains, the idea that small, consistent improvements accumulate into transformative change. The Stoics framed it as ascesis, the deliberate practice of aligning actions with values until the gap between them disappears. Here's the challenge: pick one thing, just one, to commit to for the next 30 days, not a vague goal like be more disciplined, but a specific, repeatable action. It could be as simple as writing 3 sentences of gratitude each night, or as demanding as a daily cold shower. The scale doesn't matter, the consistency does. Why 30 days? Because that's long enough to taste resistance but short enough to see progress. Long enough to prove to yourself that you're capable of change, but not so long that the goal feels abstract. The key is to treat each day as its own victory. On day 5, when excuses whisper, skip just this once. Remember, the oak tree doesn't question whether to grow today. It simply does, and when day 30 arrives, you won't just have a streak, you'll have something far more valuable. Proof that you're the kind of person who keeps promises to yourself. That's the Stoic long game. Not flashy transformations, but the quiet certainty that comes from knowing your discipline isn't borrowed, it's built. Marcus Aurelius never demanded his name be carved into the monuments he commissioned. As emperor, he saw his role not as a solo act, but as part of Rome's greater mosaic, a perspective crystallized in his journal. What benefits the hive benefits the bee. That's the heart of Stoic collaboration, recognizing that true focus isn't diluted by shared effort, it's amplified by it. Modern open-source communities embody this perfectly. When a developer contributes code to a project like Linux or Wikipedia, they're not chasing individual glory, they're part of something larger than themselves. The result, systems that power the internet and knowledge repositories accessed by millions. The Stoics would argue this isn't just altruism, it's strategic wisdom. By shifting focus from who gets credit to what gets created, you're freed from the exhausting calculus of ego and unleashed to do your best work. Consider how differently two teams approach a problem. Team A fixates on individual recognition, hoarding ideas, jockeying for visibility, while Team B operates like a Stoic symbiote, literally, one who lives with others. They ask, how can my strengths fill the gaps here? The first group burns energy on politics, the second channels it into progress. History's greatest breakthroughs, from the scientific method to the Apollo missions, weren't solo performances. They were ensembles where each player focused on their zone of contribution. When Jonas Salk declined to patent the polio vaccine, his reasoning echoed ancient wisdom. Could you patent the sun? This mindset isn't about suppressing ambition, it's about redirecting it. A graphic designer volunteering her skills for a nonprofit campaign might not gain viral fame, but her work could uplift causes that outlast trends. A junior employee who suggests an idea his manager implements without attribution isn't being exploited, he's learning that impact often matters more than applause. Even in competitive fields, the Stoic collaborator thrives by asking, what can I solve, rather than, who will notice? So here's your litmus test. Next time you're in a meeting or group project, notice where your mind lingers. Are you rehearsing how to phrase your point so it sounds impressive, or listening deeply to build on others' ideas? When you hit a breakthrough, does your first instinct lean toward claiming it or sharing it? The answers reveal whether you're trapped in validation loops or operating from contribution mindsets. Try this small but profound shift. For 1 week, begin every collaboration with a single question: how can I help? Not, how can I stand out, or what's in it for me? But where is my energy most needed? You'll discover something counterintuitive. The less you chase credit, the more your work resonates, because mastery recognized is fleeting, but value created is enduring. And that's the Stoic secret. When you stop keeping score, you start changing the game. Epictetus described the mind as an inner citadel, a fortress where no external chaos could enter without permission. Picture a medieval castle with towering walls, a moat, and guarded gates. Now imagine your focus as that fortress, and every distraction, the ping of notifications, the pull of procrastination, the chatter of unimportant tasks, as invaders trying to scale the wall. The Stoics didn't build this citadel to hide from life. They built it to choose what deserved their attention. That's the power of this metaphor. It's not about isolation, but sovereignty. Your focus isn't something that gets stolen. It's something you surrender when you lower the drawbridge for every passing thought. Modern, deep work zones are the practical embodiment of this ancient idea. Take the novelist who transforms her attic into a focus cave. No phone, no internet, just a desk, a notebook, and a single lamp. The ritual is simple but sacred. She lights a candle upon entering, signaling to her brain, this space is for creation alone. The candle isn't just ambience, it's a stoic boundary, a flickering reminder that for these hours, her mind is a citadel under her command. Cal Newport's research on deep work aligns perfectly here. The highest levels of cognitive performance demand not just skill, but defenses against the modern world's siege on attention. But the inner citadel isn't just physical, it's the mental discipline of guarding your focus like a sentry. Epictetus warned, if you don't guard the doors of your mind, someone else will. Every time you reflexively check email during a creative sprint, or let a coworker's quick question derail your flow, you're handing the keys to your citadel to someone else. The Stoic solution, gatekeeping. A software developer might use a physical token, a red cup placed on his monitor when coding, a signal to colleagues that interruptions must wait. A student might wear noise-canceling headphones not just to block sound, but to declare, even to herself, this time is protected. So here's the challenge. What does your inner citadel look like? Maybe it's a corner of your bedroom with a "Do Not Disturb" sign, or a 30-minute morning block where your phone stays in another room. Perhaps it's as simple as a mantra whispered before starting work. This hour belongs to me. The form doesn't matter, the intention does, because when you carve out these zones, you're not just avoiding distractions, you're reclaiming something deeper, the right to decide what deserves your mind's precious real estate. The world will always clamor at the gates. The question is, will you open them? We've traveled through the Stoic toolkit, control, presence, and discipline, three pillars that hold up the architecture of unshakable focus in a fractured world. The dichotomy of control taught us to invest energy only where it yields returns. Present moment awareness showed us how to reclaim attention from the tyranny of multitasking. And discipline revealed itself not as deprivation, but as the freedom to choose what truly matters. These aren't abstract ideas, they're antidotes to the modern plague of fragmentation, where our days splinter into 1,000 shallow distractions. The Stoics faced different battles, chariots instead of chatbots, scrolls instead of screens, but the war was the same, the fight for a mind that's yours to command. Seneca's words cut deeper today than ever. You're living as if destined to live forever. Your frailty never occurs to you. Time isn't just money, it's the only currency you can't earn back. Every minute spent reacting to trivialities is a withdrawal from an account that never refills. But here's the good news, focus is a skill, and skills strengthen with practice. That's why I'm leaving you with a challenge. For the next 7 days, pick one Stoic principle to test drive. Maybe it's waking up 30 minutes early to journal like Marcus Aurelius, or practicing the pause before responding to provocations. Perhaps it's a digital sunset, no screens after 8 p.m. To reclaim your evenings. The scale doesn't matter, the consistency does. This isn't about perfection. It's about noticing. Notice how often your focus is hijacked by what doesn't deserve it. Notice the quiet power that comes from saying no to the trivial so you can say yes to the meaningful. And most importantly, notice what changes when you stop treating focus as something you lose and start treating it as something you protect. Before you go, I'd love to hear which insight resonated most. Was it Epictetus' inner citadel, Seneca's nightly audits, or the radical idea that obstacles are the way? Drop one takeaway in the comments, not just for me, but for others on this same journey. Because the Stoics knew something we often forget. Wisdom grows when shared. Your focus is your life distilled. Guard it accordingly.